Hey, there's no shame in trying things that people ain't never tried before.
Mistakes and accidents are inevitable. Our bodies and minds are faulty. Acknowledging our faults, and especially apologizing, is hard, challenging, because not only do we acknowledge weakness, we show vulnerability. To apologize is to shoulder blame, or to admit wrongdoing, which is scary because people can take advantage, and do take advantage. People can use your confession to bury you, or even worse, forgive you, then hold it over your head forever. That is probably one of the worst feelings. It's probably one of the worst feelings there are. Someone holding power over you or punching you while you're down and trying to apologize. But they derive this power over you from your guilt, confessed or not. You see, people sense guilt. They can feel it. They see it in the way you walk, the way you act, how you carry yourself, and they smell the vulnerability emanating from it, and they see opportunity. Even if you are doing everything correctly, following rules, and are well-intentioned, if you are uncertain, people will prod you into guilt and then capitalize on you. It's a very authoritarian move, a dick move, for sure, but a common one, and a powerful one you ought to be aware of, so no one gets over on you. So 2 things I want to hit today. Measuring guilt, and when to apologize. But we'll start with guilt. We've been talking about guilt. So how do you measure guilt? How guilty should you feel when you do this versus how guilty you should feel when you do that? Well, guilt isn't something you should feel in the first place. Guilt is natural and human and should be experienced. Not only can you not eliminate it, but you shouldn't eliminate it, because guilt is important. But it shouldn't be a feeling which rises involuntarily. It should be a response offered. Because remember, when you're dealing with strangers or just humans in general, guilt is vulnerability. And if it rises, people will sense it. And if they sense it, then they will take advantage. But if guilt is an involuntary emotion, which it is, how do you measure it? How do you keep it down? How do you keep fear down or happiness down? How do you suppress anger? Well, always consider yourself right, at least at first. Just like dealing with other emotions, managing them, you can't make them go away completely, but you can change what triggers them. To manage your guilt, live in confidence. Guilt comes from knowing missteps and mistakes. So, you just don't misstep or mistake. You mean everything you do and everything you say. At least in the moment, so you don't falter. You can go back and review your actions later, but in the moment, if you falter, if you do wrong and know you're doing wrong, then anyone can sniff you out and seize you. Or even worse, if you're doing right and falter, and people think you're doing wrong, then they can still seize you, which is, like I said, even worse, boys. But remember, this isn't a facade. You mean what you do. You are right. Because if you aren't and you're just acting, people will still sniff you out. And that'll look even worse than if you were just normally guilty. This is double guilt, boys. Now, confidence is so effective because people are naturally violent but hate acknowledging it. So when they can be an authority righteously striking guilty people, They are all about it. But in confidence, you offer them no opportunities. You aren't a little rat boy sneaking around under an authority's nose. You are creating and commanding your own situation's control. You are an authority, and what you're doing is right. And while people will still contest you, not very often, very few people have the balls or the spines to blatantly attack someone who is in control. Especially if it's sudden. If you enter an area and try to take control and hold control, obviously you'll lose it eventually. But if you need to get something done in a moment, in a split second, and catch people by surprise with your confidence, you can get a lot done. Or even avoid conflict if that's your situation. But your goals are irrelevant. What matters is your absence of opportunities, weakness, absence of guilt. But all that is pretty obvious. If you've heard anyone discuss confidence or self-control or anything like that, you've heard all this. This is old news. But how does confidence and guilt tie into apologies, and when should you apologize, knowing everything I mentioned prior? Well, apologizing is terrifying, because, like I said earlier, people are already quick to capitalize on perceived guilt. Apologies are confessions, admissions of guilt and wrongdoing. So, how should you ration guilt? When should you apologize? Rarely, if ever. Consider when and to whom. Remember, interaction is exchange. Now, apologizing is a bad exchange, especially for you. You did something wrong and you make someone aware of it. Sure, you're sorry, but you did something wrong and you're admitting to it. On their end, they either have a new problem or are reminded of an old problem, and they have their culprit right in front of them, submitting. It's hard not to bite down or seek some kind of retribution. And most people will. Most people won't have the restraint. So, with most people, you shouldn't apologize. You should only apologize to people you trust. Because most apologies, 80% of apologies, I'd say, go wrong. And relations between you and the person you're apologizing to diminish, go bad, real quick. But those 20% of apologies can turn what should be something bad, a problem and a culprit, into something stronger. That's why apologies are important, but let me explain why. When someone accepts your apology, or you accept someone's apology, truthfully, honestly, it means you and they value what you both could mutually achieve together more than one individual mistake. That is powerful because it means you don't have to be on edge all the time. There's leeway, there's wiggle room. You can make mistakes without worrying. The apology and the acceptance are proof. It turns a guilt admission into a value admission. I messed up and I'm sorry, but I'm still useful. You messed up and you're sorry, but I forgive you because you're still useful. That bolsters morale and confidence in both of you, and builds trust. When used properly and with the right people, apologies are powerful tools. But again, be very, very careful, boys. Because if you apologize to the wrong person or under the wrong circumstances, you're done. You are done. Because most people would rather destroy you than help you and help themselves. But what do you think, boys? Is present confidence strength or weakness? And when should you apologize? When do you apologize? To whom can you apologize? I know many people say you should apologize always for everything, but that's a load of shit. Because people, well, I said it a bunch of times in the video, but people will skewer you guys. You gotta be careful. But I am curious to hear who you apologize to and why. But that about rippity wraps this one up, boys. I hope you enjoyed watching, because I certainly enjoyed making it. And I did this time very much, because it's a short video, and short videos are super easy to make. Like if you enjoyed, because that helps me out a lot, or at least I think it does. Maybe it doesn't. It makes me feel good, and I judge my self-worth based on them, but, you know, I think they help. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes, and comment your thoughts, because I love hearing from you. And I do love hearing from you, boys. But thanks again for watching, everybody, really. We have tons of fun on this channel. Tons with an N-E-S on the end, on the end of the normal ton. Tons of fun. And I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.